Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. The warning sirens had been sounding for 3 cycles already. Xander Vale stood in the Aurora Colony Command Center, watching the red lights flashing on every screen. His hands were shaking as he read the reports coming in from all sectors. The atmospheric generators were failing, and the backup systems had already been shut down. In less than 4 suns, 50,000 residents will be left without breathable air. How did it happen so fast? Xander asked his chief engineer, but he already knew the answer. The colony was built with cheap equipment, and they didn't have the money for better systems. Gaia had sent them here to mine rare crystals, but Gaia was too far away to help now. Zephyr got out of the main processing unit. His clothes were covered in grease, and his face was gloomy. The singularity chamber was hopelessly damaged, and they couldn't fix it with the available equipment. They needed a completely new life support system, or they would all die. Xander Vale felt his stomach tighten. How much will it cost? Zen replied that it would be more than the colony could earn in 5 cycles. And even if they had the funds, they wouldn't be able to deliver them on time. Throughout the colony, families gathered in their homes. Parents tried to explain to their children why the atmosphere seemed strange, why adults looked so worried, and why some people were crying in the streets. Kara Stern, the captain of the only active transport ship, was in the communications center, frantically broadcasting messages throughout space. She was the colony's last hope to contact someone who could help. Her fingers flew over the controls as she broadcast on all the frequencies she knew. This is Aurora Colony, requesting immediate assistance. Our life support system has failed, and 50,000 people will die in 4 days without help. The first responses came from nearby colonies. We are sending a rescue team, they said. Hold on, we'll be there soon. The trading stations were selling atmospheric generators for 10 times the usual price, demanding immediate payment. The colony was short of funds, and the Dragon Alliance responded coldly, stating that the human colonies were not their responsibility. The Citadel Trade Federation offered even worse conditions. Emergency life support systems cost more than the cost of the entire colony. Kara continued to send messages, but most of the aliens didn't respond. Those who answered only wanted to negotiate impossible payment terms. Nobody cares, she told herself, her voice barely audible. She sent messages for 6 cycles in a row. Her throat was dry and her eyes were tired from staring at the screens. Then something unexpected happened. A small ship appeared on their sensors. It was not human, with a strange, smooth, organic design. The ship was moving in space, as if it were floating, not flying. The unidentified vessel was from the new colony of Kara, Aurora Settlement. Please identify yourself, Kara called out. The answer came in pure human language, but with a strong accent. This is Captain Nemesis from the cargo ship Gentle Stream. We received your distress signal and came to help. Kara had never heard of Aquarians before, so they quickly looked through their database. Information was limited, but it was an aquatic species from a water world called Aza, known for its peaceful trading practices. Most of the other species considered them insignificant in galactic politics, but Captain Nemesis said, "We appreciate your response, but we have to be honest. We cannot afford the standard tariffs for atmospheric generators. Our colony is in a desperate situation." There was a long pause, and Ankia replied, "We didn't come here to sell anything. We came to help because you needed help. And that's enough." Kara was amazed by the unexpected visitors. The communication screen. She couldn't believe her ears. "Are you saying that you will help us for free? Are your people dying?" Nemesis asked simply. "We have the equipment that can save them. Why should we let you die just because you don't have the means?" The Volarian vessel docked at the colony's main port. 2 cycles later, Captain Nemesis appeared before Kara. Unlike any alien she had ever met, he was tall and slender, with smooth blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer slightly. His big eyes were kind, and when he spoke, his voice was calm and gentle. "We brought 3 atmospheric generators and medical supplies," Nemesis explained as his team began unloading the equipment. "They're not new, but they'll keep your people alive while you build better systems." Darius collaborated with Maestro's engineer to install the new processors. Despite the language barrier, they worked well together. The Maestro was a patient and competent professional, showing Kara that they were here to help. Darius demonstrated how to integrate extraterrestrial technology into human systems. He predicted that it would function for at least 1 year, possibly longer with proper maintenance. When the new systems were activated, the warning signals stopped and fresh air began to circulate through the colony. Residents came out of their homes, breathing deeply and shedding tears of joy. The children, who were scared and puzzled, were laughing again. Xander Vale met Captain Nemesis in the central square, where a crowd had gathered to express their gratitude to their heroes. The captain seemed awkward under the floodlights. "How can we ever repay you?" asked Xander Vale. "You saved our entire colony." Nemesis made a gesture that could be interpreted as a shrug. "No refund is required. We helped because we could. That's what decent people do. However, you must have suffered significant financial losses by flying here. This equipment must have cost a fortune." For the first time, Nemesis looked sad. "Yes, we suffered losses, but it was worth it to help you. It may hurt my trading company, but 50,000 lives are more important than money. We'll find another way to survive." As we were preparing to leave for the next cycle, a young woman named Lyra West approached our ship. She was only 19 cycles old, but overnight she carved something out of the local stone. The artwork was simple and crude, but made with care. Lyra handed it to Captain Nemesis, saying, "Please take this. It may not be much, but I wanted to give you something to remember me by." Nemesis accepted the stone with both hands, as if it was made of precious metal. "It's beautiful," he said. "Thank you." Lyra looked up at the alien captain, her eyes serious beyond her years. "I want you to know something," she said. "People don't forget. We don't forget those who help us when we need it most. Someday, somehow, we will repay this debt." Captain Nemesis smiled, showing teeth that were slightly pointed but still kind. "Dear young man, gratitude given without expectation of return is a gift that cannot be repaid. However, I will not forget your words." On the same day, the Valerian ship departed, disappearing into the vast expanses of space. The inhabitants of the Aurora colony watched him, knowing that they owed their lives to aliens they had never heard of before. In the following weeks, life gradually returned to normal. The atmospheric generators were functioning perfectly, and the colony continued its mining and agricultural activities. Nevertheless, everyone who survived those desperate hours had a memory of the Valerians who came when no one else came. Ira would kept a fragment of the stone she carved for Nemesis, looking at it every night before going to sleep. She remembered her promise, knowing that people don't forget. One day they will have a chance to prove that these words mean something. None of them expected this day to come so soon, and did not realize that it would change the galaxy forever. 20 cycles have passed since that day, and the memories remain vivid. The Aurora colony has been reborn. A small mining settlement has turned into a thriving world with a population exceeding 2 million. Cities cover the surface of the planet, and massive orbital stations mine rare metals for trade across the galaxy. Despite their growth and prosperity, the people of Aurora have never forgotten their duty to the Valerians. Lyra West stands in front of the Valerian Memorial Hall, watching as children from the local school lay flowers at the foot of the statue. The statue depicts Captain Nemesis holding the carved stone she gave him all those cycles ago. Every child on Aurora learns about Memorial Day, when benevolent aliens risked everything to save them. Lyra has 139 cycles, and she is one of the colony's most outstanding engineers. She used her experience and Aurora's prosperity to create something extraordinary. The Volarian Memorial Foundation provides assistance to distressed colonies throughout human space. The Volarians had a mission for them. Miss West called out to a young voice. Lyra turned around and saw a 7-year-old girl holding a drawing. "I drew this ship," she said. "Do you think Captain Nemesis will like it?" Lyra crouched down to examine the drawing, which depicted a gentle stream arriving at Aurora, with painted little men working together. "I think he'll really like it," she said softly. The girl was beaming with pride. Every child on Aurora grew up listening to stories about aliens who saved their world, and they learned that kindness should be rewarded with kindness, and debts of gratitude should never be forgotten. That evening, Lyra received an alarming message. Dr. Stellar, the colony's chief researcher for the past 15 cycles, appeared on her comm screen, his expression serious and worried. Stellar had extensive contacts across the galaxy, and he asked Lyra for help in finding a rare plant that could cure a serious disease that had afflicted the colonists. Lyra readily agreed to help, and the two of them went on a joint mission to find the plant. Their efforts were rewarded, and the plant was discovered, saving many lives. Nemesis, it's okay. The Aquarians' homeworld was in trouble. Stellar demonstrated holographic screens with trade routes and economic data. The Corvin Syndicate has imposed severe trade sanctions on Azura, gradually stifling the Volarian economy. Lyra studied the data, her anger mounting. The Corvin Syndicate was known for destroying smaller civilizations through economic warfare and then exploiting their resources. She asked, "How serious is the situation?" "She's serious," Stellar replied. "Volarians cannot import food or medical supplies, and their technological achievements are stagnating due to lack of funds for modernization. Reports indicate that people are starving." He paused, his expression darkening. "The Corvins are doing this because the Volarians refuse to give up their mining operations." Lyra felt a familiar feeling of heat in her chest when she thought about the rights to their ocean floor. It was the same feeling she had as a teenager when she watched the ship leave after it had saved them all. The galactic community didn't care about the Volarians, Stellar said bitterly. Most species considered them weak and insignificant, and the major powers were either allied with the Corwin or too afraid to challenge them. Lyra stood up from the table, her resolve growing. She knew it was time to remind the galaxy of the importance of keeping promises. Over the course of several cycles, she contacted all the influential leaders on Aurora, and their response was immediate and unanimous. Admiral Vera Blake, formerly Captain Kara Stern, commanded a small but powerful human fleet. Upon learning of the Volarian crisis, her response was swift and decisive. "These people have saved every life on this planet." "Peace," Admiral Vera said at an emergency council meeting. "If they need our help, we will provide it." The Admiral was no longer the scared captain she had been 2 decades ago, begging for help. She became an accomplished military leader, and her ships were equipped with some of the most advanced technology available on Aurora. The colony's prosperity allowed them to develop weapons and defensive systems that rivaled those of larger civilizations such as Xanthos. Now, the colony's chief engineer, who has spent 2 decades studying and improving technology, explained to his team, "We can use what we've learned to help them." Meanwhile, on the distant world of Azure, Captain Nemesis, now an elderly Volarian with age-worn skin and a worried look, served as the cultural leader of his people. He tried to keep them optimistic, but the situation was becoming more and more desperate. The spirit was high as their world gradually faded away. The Corvin trade embargo has been in effect for 2 cycles already. The Volarian children were sick due to a lack of medical supplies. The magnificent cities floating in the vast oceans of their world began to fall into disrepair due to lack of funds for repairs. Nemesis Dashka was still wearing the carved stone that Lyra had given him long ago. He often held it in difficult times, remembering the promise she made. However, he never imagined that people would remember. After all, Aurora was now thriving. Nemesis was tending the fish in his private garden when his communication device suddenly activated. The holographic display showed a familiar face, although it had aged significantly due to the demands of their work. "Hello, Captain," Nemesis greeted, recognizing Lyra's voice. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice echoing across the vast expanses of space. Nemesis' eyes widened in surprise and delight as Lyra continued. "I made you a promise that day. Do you remember?" She picked up the stone that Nemesis had carved and which had always been with him. Lyra's expression became serious as she said, "We've heard about your problems. We're coming to help." Nemesis was not surprised, as he knew that people were always resourceful and well-informed. "We'll be there soon," Lyra added, her voice firm. "We owe you a debt from Aurora that cannot be fully paid. But we can start trying today." Nemesis' eyes began to fill with tears. In their culture, tears are a sign of deep emotions, be it joy or sorrow. "You don't understand, Lyra. The Corvin Syndicate is powerful. They have hundreds of warships. If we try to help you, they will destroy us." "Let them try," Lyra replied. 20 cycles ago, everyone said that Volarians were weak. Everyone said it would be a mistake to help them. But you came anyway, because it was the right thing to do. Now it's our turn to do what's right, regardless of the price. After the bell ended, Nemesis sat in his garden for a long time, thinking about the frightened young woman who carved a simple stone with her own hands. She became a leader leading her people. Do they think they can stand up to the Draconian Alliance, the most powerful empire in the galaxy? The alien diplomats exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and amusement. They had heard the rumors about the humans' plan, but they didn't take them seriously. After all, who would believe that a species so small and insignificant could challenge the might of the Draconian Alliance? But Ambassador Zeus wasn't the only one who found the idea amusing. Other diplomats joined in the laughter. Their voices joined in a chorus of disbelief. They could not imagine that people would succeed in their mission, no matter how noble their intentions. However, the laughter didn't last long. The human ambassador, standing tall and proud, spoke. "We may be small, but we are not insignificant," he said, his voice firm and determined. "We may not be able to match the Draconian Alliance in strength, but we can match them in courage and determination. We will not stand by while the weak are being oppressed. We will not stand by while the innocent suffer. We will not stand by while the Draconian Alliance tramples on the rights of others. We will fight, and we will win." The room fell silent, and the laughter died down. The diplomats looked at the human ambassador with newfound respect. They underestimated people, but they won't make that mistake again. Humans weren't just a small and insignificant species. They were a force to be reckoned with. The ambassador continued. "Their confidence has increased since their mining colony became prosperous, but they will soon find out their place." The other ambassadors nodded in agreement, and the representative of the Citadel Trade Federation nodded in approval. The ambassador said, "Humans are a sentimental species. They make decisions with their hearts, not their heads, and that will be their undoing. The Corvin Syndicate will defeat them in a few cycles, perhaps even in a few hours." However, something unusual was happening on the outskirts of the galaxy. On small trading outposts on forgotten worlds, creatures that the great powers did not pay attention to communicated. These creatures shared stories about the gentlemen who helped them through the cycles. On the mining planet Orion Prime, the elderly Antirai remembered the kindness of the Aquarians, the medical doctor who had helped them for centuries. During the time of the Red Plague, ships arrived, while other species imposed quarantine and left them to perish. These ships brought doctors and medicines, saving countless lives. They didn't demand anything in return. In the colonies, medical space travelers shared stories about rescue ships that rescued them from dying ships around campfires. When pirates attacked merchant fleets, the captains often stayed behind to help evacuate civilians while the rest fled. Scholars of the library worlds remember teachers who freely shared their knowledge, helping to preserve ancient texts and cultural treasures of numerous civilizations without expecting payment or special treatment. These actions were ignored by the powerful and dismissed as insignificant by an insignificant species, but the people who received help remember them all. On Aurora, Admiral Vera Blake stands as a symbol of hope. The command center of Vera's flagship, the Memory, was surrounded by virtual screens displaying the deployment of her small fleet of 24 vessels, each equipped with technologies that took decades to develop. Admiral Vera called Captain Sage and Parker from their positions at the tactical station, and they received reports from their reconnaissance ships. The Corvan fleet was advancing towards Volarian space with at least 200 warships and possibly more. Vera calmly studied the tactical display, having spent 20 cycles preparing for this moment. The colony's debt influenced every decision regarding military development, and it did not anticipate this precise moment. "What about our allies?" asked Vera. Captain Jean Min, commander of the destroyer Hope of the Covenant, appeared on the comm screen, but there was still no response from the great powers. The Galactic Council has officially declared this a private dispute, and they will not interfere. Vera agreed. She suspected as much. She knew that great civilizations only care about profit and power, and they would stand by while people suffered, unwilling to lift a finger. As soon as they reap the benefits, they share the spoils. Dr. Miho Song entered the control room, carrying a data tablet filled with his latest discoveries. He looked solemn but determined. "I have completed the analysis of the Corvan trade embargo," he said. "It violated 17 interstellar trade agreements." "What does that mean?" asked Ning. Miho shook his head. "The lawsuits will take years, maybe even decades. They will be gone by then. But it gives us the moral right to act the way we should." Back on Aurora, Lyra West led the largest humanitarian operation in human history. Every transport ship on the planet was loaded with food, medicine, and supplies for the Volarians' homeworld. Even if their military fails, they will at least try to keep Azure alive until other help arrives. "The economic support packages are ready," she informed the Colony Council. "We are selling off our emergency reserves and redirecting our entire trade surplus to efforts to help the Volarians." The receptionist, Xander Vale, an elderly man with a sharp mind, looked around the table, looking at the faces he had known for decades. "This will lead us to bankruptcy if the plan fails," he said. "We will lose everything that we have built here." Lyra replied, "The Volarians lost everything to save us. How can we do less for them?" The decision was unanimous. The Aurora colony would risk its future for the Volarians. To settle the debt that had been accumulating for 2 decades, the Corvan fleet was preparing for what they considered an easy victory in the depths of space. The invasion force was commanded by the main merchant Caesar from his massive flagship, the Edge of the Prophet. Caesar, a typical Corvan, was tall and thin, with gray skin and cold, yellow eyes that saw everything in monetary terms. According to his intelligence officer's report, humans were sending their small fleet to protect aquatic life. "Should we quickly destroy them and proceed to capture Azura?" Caesar asked, leaning back in his command chair and calculating the profit potential from this conquest. "Let them come. When we have crushed their puny vessels, we will send a message to all small species in the galaxy. Do not cross the Corvan Combine at your own risk." He has already developed a strategy for dividing up the vast oceans of Azura, a world rich in rare minerals worth trillions of credits. Their cities will be his, and their inhabitants will be enslaved by the Corwin. The population will be relocated to work camps on distant worlds after the planet is stripped of its resources and sold for scrap. What about the other types? The tactical officer asked. Intelligence reports suggested that some small civilizations were expressing support for humans, but Caesar, the leader, rejected this suggestion with a laugh. He stated that once this was over, they would see what would happen to those who dared to interfere in Corwin's affairs. However, something unexpected was happening. In shipyards spanning numerous star systems, ships were quietly preparing to depart. These vessels were not warships, but rather commercial vessels, research vessels, passenger transports, and even mining barges, all heading for the same destination. It seemed that the Enturi Collective and the Drifter clans had decided to send medical ships and other vessels to assist, while the Liberian worlds were also loading their ships with food and supplies. On Azura, Captain Nemesis addressed his people one last time before the storm descended. He stood on a magnificent assembly, a majestic structure with a domed roof that floated on the largest ocean on the planet. Thousands of Volarians gathered to listen to his words, their large eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and hope. "My people," Nemesis began, his aged voice carrying clearly over the water. "Uncertain times await us. The Corvin fleets are closing in, intent on taking over our world and enslaving our children. We have no great armies to defend ourselves, nor powerful allies to turn to." The crowd roared with concern, but Nemesis raised his hand, calling for silence. He reached into his robes and took out a small, smooth stone, smoothed by decades of use. "But we have something that the Corvins don't understand," he continued. "We have a memory of gratuitous kindness. 20 cycles ago, they extended a helping hand to a small human colony, because it was the right thing to do. Today, these people reciprocate. For the same reason, a young human woman held the stone up so that everyone could see. This simple gift was created by a human woman who swore that her people would never forget. Today we will see if people keep their promises." As if responding to the woman's call, new contacts began to appear in Azura's sensory networks. Ships were approaching the edge of the star system, not only human vessels, but also ships of dozens of different species. More arrived each cycle, and Nemesis smiled as he held the stone in his hands. This small object, carved by a frightened young woman in a moment of gratitude, has become a symbol of something much more powerful than a weapon. The galaxy was about to learn that kindness could grow into a force capable of shaking the very foundations of the established order. The storm was gathering, and at its center was a truth that the powerful had forgotten. Those who help others are never truly alone. The battle in the Azure Nebula began at exactly 8 o'clock Galactic Standard Time. The first salvo from the Corvin ships unleashed a barrage of fire on Admiral Vera Blake's small human fleet. Military analysts predicted that the conflict would be resolved within a few hours, but their forecast turned out to be inaccurate. From the command bridge of his massive fleet, Chief Merchant Caesar watched the movement of his ships as they formed into battle formation, with 237 Corvin warships facing off against 24 human vessels. The outcome was so simple that even a child could figure it out. Target their flagship first. It was Caesar's order to his weapons officer. He sought to quickly eliminate their leadership and send a message to all the lesser species watching the battle. The first wave of Corvin rockets took off into space, rushing towards the human fleet. Admiral Vera stood calmly on the bridge of the memory, her eyes glued to the tactical display. 20 cycles of preparation have led to this moment. "All ships, execute the current maneuver," she commanded. The subsequent events were astounding. Every military observer in the galaxy was thrilled to watch the human ships perform a maneuver that had never been seen before. Instead of forming rigid battle lines or defensive clusters, They flowed around the Corvin attacks like water around rocks. The ships that should have been destroyed by direct hits simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. Captain Sage Parker led the first squadron of human fighters in a maneuver that defied conventional space warfare theory. His ships danced through the Corvin formation, hitting weak spots and disappearing before returning fire could find them. How do they do that? Caesar demanded of his tactical officer. Their ships are too small to have such speed and maneuverability, he replied. Unknown, sir. Their movement patterns don't match any known human technology. It was as if they had learned how to fight from another species. They had Darius Lee and his team of engineers who spent 2 decades studying technology and philosophy. Volarians moved in space with grace and harmony, rather than relying on brute force, just like they moved in water on their home planet. Humans had learned to think like them, which made it almost impossible to attack them. But even more surprising than human tactics were the new ships that began to appear at the edge of the battle zone. New ships arrived every few minutes, and they were neither human nor Corvin. 3 medical vessels from the anti-Rai team were the first to arrive. Captain Jean Myung, from the destroyer Hope of the Covenant, received a transmission that filled his heart with hope. A human vessel. This is Commander Kren of the anti-Rai ship Healing Light. We have heard that people honor their debts to those who help them. Our people were saved by the Volarians. Medical care during the Red Plague. 50 cycles ago, we remember the appearance of numerous ships. The nomadic drifting clan has dispatched a fleet of converted cargo ships armed with mining lasers. The scientists of the worlds provided research vessels equipped with advanced sensor arrays, and even a peaceful gardening collective sent ships loaded with agricultural supplies for Caesar Azura. As we watch the collapse of his flawless battle plan, the enemy forces increase by the hour. But where did these ships come from? Intelligence had reported that the Volarians had no allies, but his intelligence officer had replied that they had no formal allies. These species had no military agreements with the Volarians, and most of them did not even have military forces. Then why were they here? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Maestro, an elderly Volarian engineer who helped rescue Aurora 20 cycles ago, was on one of the ships. The voice of the leader of the drifting clan reverberated across the battlefield, heard by everyone. We're here because the Volarians came to our aid when no one else could. Our people were dying of the plague. When our ships broke down in deep space, when our children needed medicines, they came to help. They didn't ask for anything, but they gave everything. Their words have been translated into dozens of languages and broadcast to ships throughout our growing fleet. Other captains joined in, sharing their stories of the Volarians' kindness. The captain from the Cass mining colony spoke next. When the Red Death swept through our worlds, powerful nations quarantined us, leaving us to die. But when the Volarians arrived, we lost 3 medical ships to save our people, and they never asked for compensation. An elderly commander from the outer territories shared his story. When pirates attacked our food convoys, leaving our children starving, the Volarians shared their supplies until we could grow new crops. Their own people went without food so that our families could eat. Stories of these acts of kindness spread across the galaxy, but were forgotten by historians and rejected by those who valued only military might and credits. However, those who were saved remembered these actions with perfect clarity. Caesar realized with growing horror that he was not facing a military alliance, but something much more dangerous. The galaxy's debts for unpaid aid had to be paid off at once. He ordered all ships to concentrate fire on the largest ships. If we can disrupt their coordination, the smaller ships will escape. But the strange fleet had no formal coordination that could be disrupted. Each species fought in their own way, using their own tactics with the same goal. They were not professional soldiers following orders. They were ordinary beings who never forgot an act of kindness. When the human vessel, the Edge of Gratitude, under the command of Captain Darius and Kim, successfully broke through the defensive line of Corvin, they applied a strategy inspired by Volarian engineering principles, overloading their engines to create a powerful electromagnetic pulse. This simultaneously disabled numerous Corvin ships, disrupting their enemy formation. Admiral Vera then stated, "Let's remember why we're fighting and who we're fighting for." The answer came not only from the human ships, but from every ship in the temporary fleet. Various species that had never fought together before joined together as one against the Corvin fleet. Mining ships used industrial lasers to penetrate enemy armor. Research vessels jammed their communication systems, and even civilian transports rammed enemy ships to protect smaller fighters. Chief Merchant Caesar watched as his magnificent fleet was torn apart by a group of merchants, miners, and medical ships, all fighting side by side for a common goal. At the beginning of the battle, they should have retreated. The fights resembled experienced warriors, which was mysterious given his knowledge of war and economics. "Sir, we are receiving reports of significant casualties. More than half of our fleet is either disabled or destroyed, and the remaining ships are requesting permission to depart." Caesar Wall was stunned by the tactical display. How did it happen? His fleet was larger, better equipped, and professionally trained. Calculations were supposed to ensure victory. "The enemy was not fighting for money or territory," the officer said, "but for something we never understood." For the first time in his life, Caesar faced an opponent who could not be measured in terms of gain or loss. He was facing an enemy who was fighting for more than material gain. "The signal for a general retreat," he said softly, "and to retreat completely into the Corvin space." After the retreat of the remaining Corvin ships, the hastily assembled fleet did not pursue them. Instead, they formed a defensive perimeter around the damaged vessels and provided support to those in need. Even Admiral Vera, who was the enemy, initiated communication with all the ships of the fleet. This triumph was made possible by the collective desire to show kindness, knowing that kindness begets kindness. Now the galaxy has been informed that those who help others are never truly alone. Captain Nemesis on Azura watched the combat reports with tears in his eyes. The stone in his hands was smooth from decades of faithful service. The promise made by the young woman grew into something that shook the very foundations of galactic power. The Corvin Syndicate has learned a lesson that will reverberate throughout space for generations. There are forces in the universe more powerful than any weapon. Gratitude, if cultivated properly, is the most powerful of all. The battle has been won, but the real struggle for the future of the galaxy has just begun. The aftermath of the battle in the Azure Nebula caused shock to all the great powers in the galaxy. The mighty Corvin Syndicate has been humiliated by a group of species that most civilizations have never heard of. The unthinkable has happened, and the established order is crumbling. But Admiral Vera knew that one victory was not the end. Standing on the deck of her ship, watching the repair crews working on the damaged ships, she realized that the real struggle had just begun. The Corvin Syndicate wasn't going to just accept defeat and disappear. They will regroup, enlist the help of other great powers, and return with even greater strength. The Admiral contacted Captain Sage Parker and informed him of the urgent messages from Aurora. Dr. Miho Song had important information for the Galactic Council. Back at Aurora Colony, Dr. Miho and his team of legal experts and researchers worked tirelessly for weeks, delving into ancient trade agreements, forgotten treaties, and hidden legal documents. Their findings will change everything. After 20 cycles of thorough investigation, they uncovered the truth about the illegal activities of the Corvin Syndicate. They weren't just aggressive competitors. They were criminals on a galactic scale. Lyra West stood next to Miho as he prepared for his presentation to the Galactic Council. Holographic displays around them displayed evidence of countless crimes. illegal blockades, forced labor, environmental destruction, and theft of resources from dozens of worlds. The Corvin trade embargo against the Volarians was just the tip of the iceberg. Miho explained that they had been engaged in this activity with smaller civilizations for over 2 centuries. The great powers knew about it, but they turned a blind eye because the Corvins shared their profits. Lyra studied the data with growing anger. "How many species have they destroyed?" Salaminho replied. "At least 47 that we can prove. Probably a lot more. They will impose impossible trading conditions, wait for civilizations to fail, and then strip everything of value." The evidence was overwhelming. The Corvin Syndicate has repeatedly violated every major interstellar law. They enslaved entire populations, poisoned planets to make mining easier, and destroyed competitors through economic warfare that could be considered genocide. Just a few cycles later, Ambassador Hyen appeared before the entire Galactic Council, presenting irrefutable evidence. The large assembly hall fell silent as she presented the evidence of crime after crime, each one carefully documented and verified. For 2 centuries, the great powers of this galaxy have turned a blind eye to the suffering of lesser civilizations, Hyen declared, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Your measure of value was based on the size of your fleet and the volume of your trade, allowing the strong to exploit the weak for profit." Ambassador Zeus from the Draconian Alliance tried to interrupt, but Hyen continued without interruption. "Today you have learned that your actions have consequences. Which metric is really important? It's not the size of your military force or the abundance of your treasury, but whether you reach out to those in need when they need help." The evidence was so convincing that even Corvin's allies began to distance themselves. The Dragon Alliance quietly withdrew its support. The Citadel Trade Federation has announced that they are terminating all agreements with Corvin-affiliated organizations. However, the most significant blow came when the smaller species began to merge. These species that have been ignored, rejected, or exploited for centuries have suddenly found their voice. They formed what became known as the Gratitude Alliance, with Aurora Colony serving as its hub. This alliance was unlike any political entity the galaxy had ever seen. It was not based on military might or economic strength, but on shared values of mutual assistance and gratitude. Those who helped others were protected by those they helped. Those who were saved felt a sense of duty to help others in need. Captain Nemesis was amazed to see the Volarians' homeworld come alive with activity. Rescue ships of numerous types delivered food, medical supplies, and other resources to the blockaded Volarians. The blockade that was slowly strangling his people was not only lifted, it was reversed. Instead of being cut off from the galaxy, the Volarians found themselves in the heart of a new civilization. Nemesis, the leader, was chatting with his longtime companion, Maestro, as he watched human engineers work alongside anti-human doctors to rebuild damaged cities. Nemesis was amazed by what had happened. "I never imagined this would happen," he said. "When we were helping a small human colony, we thought we were just doing what decent people should do for each other. However, people have shown us that decent people also remember and act according to their actions." The Maestro smiled, showing satisfaction from a well-lived life. "We did what we had to do, but people reminded us that we had to remember and act." Changes were happening everywhere, even on mining planets. In the Orion Prime area, the Anti-Rai team shared its advanced medical technologies with everyone in need. The Drifter clans have opened their trade routes to species that were previously excluded by the great powers. Librarians of the universe began to share their knowledge, rather than accumulate it for the rich. Meanwhile, the Corvin Syndicate was falling apart. The main trader Caesar has been tried for war crimes on numerous planets. His business empire was dismantled, and the stolen resources were returned to their rightful owners. How could it happen so fast? Caesar asked his advisors. He controlled half of the galaxy's trade routes and had agreements with all the great powers. His legal advisor, Corwin Wexter, was shaking as he fingered the data tablets. People have uncovered evidence of all the illegal activities that the Syndicate was engaged in. Worse, they shared this evidence with everyone in the galaxy. Everyone knew about the Syndicate's actions. But why now? Caesar asked desperately. These crimes have been going on for centuries. Why does anyone care about ancient civilizations and forgotten species now? The answer came from an unexpected source. A broadcast was broadcast all over the universe on all available frequencies. It showed a simple ceremony taking place in the Aurora colony. Lyra West stood in front of the Valerian Memorial Hall, surrounded by statues dedicated to dozens of species that helped others. In her hands, she held a carved stone similar to the one she gave Captain Nemesis 20 cycles ago. However, this stone was different. It was bigger and more complex, made by skilled artisans rather than a scared young woman. This monument symbolizes every good deed that the powerful have tried to erase from history, Lyra told the crowd. Every species that helped in need. Every civilization that shared when it was difficult to share. Every being who chose compassion over profit. She laid the stone at the base of the monument, where it joined thousands of others. Each stone represents a debt of gratitude to those who helped us. Remembering, the kindness is returned, the promise is kept. The universe tried to teach us that only power and wealth matter, Lyra continued. Now we're teaching the universe a different lesson. We teach them that those who help others are not forgotten. We demonstrate that gratitude, if properly nurtured, becomes a force that can transform the world. The transmission has ended, but its message is reverberating throughout the cosmos. The old order, built on exploitation and neglect of suffering, is fading. In its place, something new appears. Something based on a simple concept that began with a carved stone and a young woman's vow. The collapse of the Corvin Syndicate was just the beginning. The entire power structure of the universe is about to undergo a transformation. And at the heart of this change is the revolutionary idea that kindness must be remembered and returned. Captain Nemesis, watching the broadcast from his home on Azura, held his own carved stone and smiled. The frightened man, once a member of the Syndicate, now understood the meaning of kindness. By taking the oath, he became the leader who shapes the galaxy. All this happened because the two species learned the most important lesson in the universe. Those who help others will never be truly alone. 5 cycles have passed since the battle in the Azure Nebula. The galaxy barely resembled its former self. The old powers that ruled through fear and greed have either been defeated or transformed. In their place, something unprecedented has emerged. A civilization built on the principle that kindness deserves kindness in return. Aurora Colony became the heart of this new order, a diplomatic hub where representatives of over 200 species gathered to coordinate mutual aid and celebrate acts of compassion. President Lyra West, her hair now streaked with gray, made her way through the council chambers. She recalled the vow she had made and the progress they had made. However, her eyes were still shining with determination. The walls were decorated with memorials to each species that extended a helping hand, and each story was carefully preserved for future generations to learn from. At the heart of the main hall stood the original monument to Captain Nemesis and the Valerians, a simple carved stone she created in her youth, proudly displayed in a place of honor, protected by a crystal case, but still visible to everyone passing by. Thousands of similar stones surrounded him, each representing a recognized duty and a fulfilled promise. President West welcomed the ambassador from the Anti-Rai Kren Collective. Representatives from the Outer Rim colonies have arrived, eager to officially join the Gratitude Alliance. Lyra smiled as the newcomers entered the room. Refugees from worlds destroyed by the old system, species that had been rejected as insignificant and weak. Now they have come to add their voices to the chorus of gratitude, a growing chorus of civilizations united by faith in mutual aid. Lyra greeted them all, saying that every vote counts. Every story of kindness strengthens us. On Aurora, the orbital stations that once processed rare metals for interstellar trade now serve a different purpose. They coordinate relief efforts across the galaxy, sending relief ships wherever they are needed. The Gratitude Fleet, led by Admiral Vera Blake, has expanded from 24 human vessels to over 3,000 ships of various types. Admiral Vera stands on the bridge of his flagship, now named the Gift of Nemesis, watching as a convoy of medical ships sets off for a plague-stricken world in the Andromeda Galaxy. The ship is a powerful warship and a mobile hospital, perfectly embodying the new philosophy of using force to protect and heal rather than conquer and destroy. Captain Sean Parker reports to Admiral Vera, now her second in command. We have received a distress signal from the Epsilon sector. A solar storm has damaged atmospheric generators on 3 colony worlds, requiring urgent assistance. Vera asked how long it would take us to get to them. At our maximum speed, it will take 18 cycles. A hospital ship is on its way out of the Kara system, and Kara will be the first to arrive to provide emergency medical support. Vera nodded with satisfaction, knowing that this is how the galaxy works now. When someone calls for help, they respond quickly and comprehensively. No one was left to die alone, while others were counting on the financial benefits of providing assistance. On the distant planet Azure, the transformations were even more profound. The Volarian homeworld has become a center of learning and healing, attracting beings from all over the universe to study the philosophy that triggered this transformation. The once crumbling floating cities, once abandoned due to economic sanctions, now shone with new developments funded by grateful species who remembered the kindness of the Volarians. Captain Nemesis, who is now 90 cycles old but still has a sharp mind, spent his days educating young people about the role of his people in the new galactic order. He still carried the carved stone that Lyra had given him, even though it was almost worn away from decades of faithful storage. He told his students, "We didn't set out to change the galaxy. We just did what we thought was right. We helped because we needed help. People have taught us that small actions can have a profound impact, into something bigger than we could have imagined," said one of his young students, Ketso, raising her hand. "Teacher Nemesis, why do people remember when so many others forget?" Nemesis smiled, a smile that became famous throughout the galaxy as a symbol of gentle wisdom, for they understood something that the old powers had never learned. They understood that being saved changes you forever. When someone helped you, when you couldn't offer anything in return, they became part of your story, and you became part of theirs. Across the galaxy, the Dragon Alliance struggled to adapt to the new reality. Ambassador Zemero, who had once scoffed at human intentions, was now begging for inclusion in the Gratitude Alliance. Their warlike culture isolated them, leaving them friendless in a galaxy that valued compassion above conquest. "Please," he told Dr. Miho Song during a diplomatic meeting on Novaya Zemlya, "let us join your alliance. Aurora, our people are starving, and our military economy has collapsed. We need help to move to peaceful trade." Miho, Aurora's new chief diplomatic advisor, looked thoughtfully at the stern ambassador. "Help will be provided, Ambassador. But first your people must understand something important. The help we offer is not a deal. It is a gift with a responsibility." "What kind of duty?" Zomer asked worriedly. "It is our duty to help others when they need it, and to remember that we once needed it ourselves." Miho paused, letting the words sink in. "Can your people accept this responsibility? The transformation is not only political and economic, it is cultural. Children on countless worlds grow up learning about the carved stone and its promise of change. They learn that their value is determined not by their physical prowess or material wealth, but by their commitment to helping others. On the anniversary of the Battle of the Azure Nebula, a special event was held simultaneously on each member world of the Gratitude Alliance. President Lyra West delivered her speech from Aurora, while Captain Nemesis addressed his people from Azura. Their words have been transmitted to billions of beings across the galaxy. 5 cycles ago, Lyra began, we were faced with a choice between the old path and the new path. The old way said that only the strong survive. The new way said that power should be used to elevate the weak. Nemesis continued his thought. From his distant world, he chose a new path, and the galaxy chose it with us. Not because it was easy, but because it was the right thing to do. The event ended with the traditional laying of new stones at monuments across the galaxy. Each stone represented a commitment to continue on the path to a better future, to continue the work of building a society based on mutual assistance and goodwill. A small human child named Jehoiakim approached the monument on Aurora, the great-grandson of Admiral Vera. In his small hands, he held a stone that he had carved himself. It was rough and simple, but made with love and care. "I promise to remember," he said, repeating the words spoken by countless other children across the galaxy before him. "I will help. I will maintain the tradition of kindness that has been passed down to me." He laid his stone at the base of the monument, not ending the cycle of gratitude, but ensuring its continuation for future generations. When the ceremony came to an end and the crowd dispersed, Lyra stood silently in front of the original monument. No longer the terrified young woman who carved that first stone in desperation and hope. She was now a leader who helped shape galactic civilization through her actions. However, in her soul, she remained the same young woman who had made the vow. As a compassionate alien captain, she vowed that people would not forget those who helped them. This oath turned into something that transformed the worlds and completely rebuilt them. The universe learned that gratitude, if nurtured and sustained with dedication, was a force capable of shifting stars. At the heart of all this was the truth, which would serve as a guiding principle for future generations. Those who helped others were never forgotten, and their kindness was reflected in time. A new trend has emerged, and it will last forever.